Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP Sports Talk, Season 5, Episode 31, and overall 251 as well. But again, good afternoon, everyone. And again, Live with CDP Sports Talk is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at Barry Cullen Chevrolet at 519-824-0210, or you guys can email them at info@barrycullen.com as well. And also, guys, you can now pre-order the all-electric Cadillac Lyriq and the all-electric Silverado as well. And if you want to come down to Barry Cullen Chevrolet, you can now do a test drive on the Cadillac Lyriq as well. Or, guys, check out a 2023 Chevy Trailblazer RS, which I just purchased 6 weeks ago, and I love it as well. So thank you to Barry Cullen Chevrolet for sponsoring Live with CDP podcast as well. Before we bring on the guests, Live with CDP Sports Talk is now a weekly show on weeklies. It's a weekly show at 8 o'clock Eastern on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, the home of Southern sports and talk, the heartbeat of Atlanta. And I want to say thank you to Ryan O'Neill for taking a chance on me. And again, check me out, I think 3-4 nights a week at 8 o'clock Eastern on WQE 99.1 FM as well. Anyways, guys, I hope everyone's doing well today. I'm really looking forward to my show. His name is Owen Hall, and he's a producer with TSN 1050 in Toronto, and he does the Raptor games, and he's also does some freelance media work as a producer, technical producer as well. So I'm going to bring on Owen Hall right here. Good afternoon, Owen. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay, Chris. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, seems like you're on episode 251 here. Oh my gosh, man. You're on quite a roll here.
I started this show March of 2020. So actually 3 years ago I started this podcast.
Man, keep rolling, man. You're doing some good stuff here.
Yeah, definitely. I guess you had to do a game last night. So how did that go with the Raptors Clippers game?
Yeah, it went great, man. I mean, it was definitely a late one. 10 tip off, I think, and didn't really get out of there till 1:30, 2 a.m. But I do kind of like those games, and the Clippers are a good team. It's always nice to watch PG and Kawhi, and it's been a bit of a back and forth season for the Raptors so far. But no, the opportunity to produce for TSN 1050 has been a great one. It's been a blessing, and it doesn't really feel like a job a lot of the time, to be honest with you. I'm really lucky to do it, and yeah, no. When you come out of a broadcast, and there's no major problems. It's usually a pretty good night.
Yeah, one thing I've learned with Rogers TV and even Griff Vision with the University of Guelph, sometimes live TV and live stream, there's always some kind of glitch, and you got to work around it or try to fix it. So things don't always go perfectly, even in a podcast like this too. Sometimes I have audio glitches.
Yeah, fair. But for me, like for live events, that's a part of the fun. That's what makes it special for me. There's certainly pros and cons of it, but I love doing live events. I love being a part of special moments, and yeah, I like the pressure. I like the fast paced environment, and that's what makes it fun.
What's it like working along with Eric Smith and Paul Jones? I've had Eric Smith on my show when I first started out. He gave me some great advice, and I'm working right now to get Paul Jones on as well.
Yeah, so on TSN 1050, we don't actually work with Eric Smith. It's Paul Jones and Javon Shepard.
Okay.
Javon's a former Canadian men's national team player. He played for University of Michigan. So I work with Jonesy and Javon, and it's honestly been a blessing, man. Like they're such an amazing team to work with. Not only them, but some of the techs that I work with as well. You know, starting off with Paul. Like Paul's not only basketball knowledge, but knowledge of sort of the inner basketball industry. Like he knows about referees, he knows about staff, he knows about so many other things within the basketball industry. Not only that, but the sports media industry as well. It's so funny. Like if you talk to anybody in the basketball industry, they know Jonesy. You know, the casual basketball fan who watches a game every month or so might not know who he is, or someone who doesn't listen to radio might not know who he is. But if you talk to anybody in a basketball circle, they know who he is. Like I was at a Carleton Ryerson University game a few weeks ago, and I had previously done an interview with Dave Smart, their former head coach, when all those years they're winning. I mean, they still are to a certain extent, but he was a part of that Carleton Ravens dynasty. And I told him about my new job at 1050 and producing the broadcast. And I mentioned who I worked with, and I work with Warren Ward as well, who's a former U Ottawa player, and he remembers coaching against him. And then I said, Jonesy, Paul Jones, and you could just see his eyes just light up. I'm like, oh, Jonesy. But one thing I have to give Jonesy credit for is recognizing his team around him and giving not only me, but other techs, other producers, their credit. Like he will shout us out almost every single quarter, and not many other radio play-by-play guys do that. And you know, I can't speak more about what he's done for basketball in Toronto, basketball in Canada, but basketball for radio as well. And we had an incident where the Raptors were playing the Rockets away, and they needed Jonesy for TV because Matt Devlin had some sort of health incident or wasn't feeling well, and they needed him for the TV side. And it was like a really, really hectic thing. Like they needed him for TV like half an hour before our pregame started. So I was just trying to hang up and trying to get our broadcast together. And so he ended up doing the game for TV through a voiceover because Jack was in Houston and he was still in Toronto. And like it's such an incredibly hard thing to do when your color guy is in a completely different city than you are, and you still have to kind of keep that chemistry and do the game. And he came back and we talked to him. He's like, man, I didn't do the radio broadcast justice. And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, man, like you're on TV, like don't worry about us, you know. But like he cares so much about his craft and about the radio station. And you know, I really can't thank him enough for being a part of the team. And Javon's amazing too, man. Javon's a little bit newer to the game, and he's done some, by game I mean sports media, not basketball. He's been playing basketball his whole life, but he's been amazing too, and he's been learning incredibly fast. And you know, it's just not only those guys, but the team that I have around me is just so incredibly supportive, and everybody's the communication is really good. Everybody's involved, and overall, it's just a blessing.
Now, are the announcers going back onto the road games, or are they still doing it in the studio?
We have them in studio right now. I think they've been doing that since early 2020. I can't remember whether it was a COVID thing or not, but yeah. So it's a little bit of a different environment. We kind of take IS background noise from either the TSN or the Sportsnet truck, and we feed it through our own source, and we kind of combine that with our mics in the studio. We have a little setup where we have a stream that's delay free, and we have Jonesy and Javon sit at the desk. And it's not ideal, obviously, you know, like especially as a producer, it would be great to have those guys travel on the road, and I'm sure it would improve the broadcast a little bit, but it's a decent setup.
I was going to say the pandemic kind of changed a little bit of things as well. Now, are the Leafs, Joe Bowen and Jim Ralph, still doing the road games from Studio 2 instead of going with the team?
They are, yeah.
Okay. And I was going to ask you also with Shepard and Paul Jones, did it take a while to develop chemistry on air, or did they click right away?
I think they have a really, really unique chemistry that was like it was definitely there from the beginning. And it was really, really unique because again, Javon's like hasn't been in sports media for a long time, like not nearly as long as Jonesy, obviously, but they kind of had a really, really good back and forth from the start. I mean, from relatively new commentator duos, you expect there to be a little bit of interrupting or a little bit of awkwardness, but their chemistry is really, really good. But it's improved, in my opinion, exponentially throughout the year. It's incredibly. I find our broadcast is, you know, light when it needs to be, serious when it needs to be. We're not afraid to have fun with our segments and talk about personal anecdotes, and that's something that I really like from them. If we can get some sort of personal anecdote from either of them, it makes the broadcast 10 times better. I think we were doing a Phoenix game, and Javon Shepard was telling a story about doing a basketball camp with Chris Paul and what he learned from that. And but I think those guys started off with a really, really good chemistry, but it's only been getting better in the I think just not only the improvement from them, but the overall improvement of the broadcast. Because I'm new as well. Like we're all beginners here to a certain extent, except for Jonesy, obviously. But yeah, I've gotten more comfortable. I think they've gotten more comfortable, and I can't wait to see what this blossoms into.
Now, are the Raptors currently the only team in the NBA that has their games on two stations? Because I found that kind of unique. Half of them are on Sportsnet and half are on TSN 1050.
Yeah, I think there are a few other teams that have their I think they do have a couple. I can't remember because like I will usually go down. There's an NBA Blue Book with contacts from each team and media contacts from each team. And from what I have seen, I think there are multiple radio stations for each team. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. I don't know how common it is. Um, but yeah, I mean it's kind of the norm with Toronto sports as a whole. It's kind of the whole Rogers Bell thing, and yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, I have to ask you this while I got you on. How does it work with the playoffs? Let's say the Raptors make the playoffs. You guys split that up as well?
Yeah, it's all 50-50. And I think I'm not sure how it works with radio, but I know for television there's some sort of selection process. It's almost like a draft, and they kind of like pick which games they want. And I remember there was a thing where either Sportsnet or TSN, I can't remember, but they wanted the game that Kyle Lowry was going to come back, and I don't think Kyle Lowry ended up playing in that game. So there was a kind of like but yeah, it's still 50-50 split.
Okay. Now, I'm a radio guy. I grew up in the 70s listening to radio and stuff like that. I like TV as well, but one thing was about radio broadcasts is you got to paint more of a picture for the audience than on the TV side.
Yeah, and that's something that I really, really enjoy. That's something that I enjoy and appreciate and push because all of the sort of major guys in sports media right now are like TV guys. When you talk about your Mike Breens and others, but it's an entirely different craft, right? And I'm someone who is originally a writer, and like painting a picture is something that I can really, really appreciate. Like imagery is really, really important to me, and Jonesy does a really, really good job of that, whether it be describing the way the jerseys are, the way that they're going, the location. Um, it's an entirely different craft, like I said, and he does a fantastic job of it. And I'm sure there are other guys around the league that do an amazing job as well. But that it's a special skill, man, and it's a skill that's probably dying out a little bit, if I'm honest with you. But doing radio definitely changes the way that you the way that you analyze, the way that you look at games. Like I find I'm looking at basketball games a little bit differently now because I have that radio lens, like you're seeing sort of smaller details in the corner of these broadcasts, and like because there are a ton of smaller things that happen in basketball games as well. Like it's not just what's happening on the ball. There's players having interactions with fans. There's, off, when you're looking at a lot of offensive sets, a lot of what happens from those sets comes from off ball screens and, you know, other stuff like that. And I think when you can identify that and bring that through radio, that's incredible, because it's a very, very difficult thing to do, and it's definitely a craft that you have to work at for a very, very long time, and that's why I appreciate it.
And one thing, this is just from what I've seen, there's more storytelling aspects to radio than TV.
For sure, and that's where I think a lot of the, not only storytelling of the game, but storytelling of, like I said, like personal anecdotes, and almost making it, I don't know if this is the right way to describe it, but like making it personal. Like, um, and at the end of the day, storytelling will always be personal. And there are so many, for me, whenever I look at a game like last night's game had so many different narratives coming into it. And if you can storytell those narratives correctly and really, really paint a picture on those, then you're doing an amazing job. Like we had Kawhi playing against the Raptors again. We have Russell Westbrook playing with his new team. They were on a 5-game skid before that, and they finally got a win under their belt against Sacramento, I think it was. Um, the Clippers have a few new guys in their lineup: Mason Plumlee, Eric Gordon, Bones Highland, guys like that. And you have like, how is Jakob Poeltl going to match up? Or how is Jakob Poeltl going to fit in the rotation? Sometimes he wasn't playing down the stretch in that Chicago game about a week ago or so. He didn't get many minutes in the first Washington game. Who is OG Anunoby going to guard? There's just so many different storylines coming into these games, and the more narratives that you can create, I think the better experience it is for a fan. And I think, like, surely there are definitely a lot of games that do have a lot of stuff to offer from last night, but I think from a producer's perspective, the real work comes when you have a game that might not have a lot of those obvious storylines or obvious narratives, and digging those out. It's like, how am I going to make a Tuesday night game against San Antonio entertaining for my audience? I probably will have to dig a little bit deeper in terms of my research. I'll probably have to find some storylines that, like I said, aren't as obvious. Maybe highlight some players that don't get a lot of love in the media, because I think in basketball, that's what I really, really like. There's so many players that are doing so many great things on different teams that aren't necessarily regarded as stars. And if I can tell those stories, both from a basketball and a personal perspective, it makes the broadcast that much better.
Absolutely. And when I even do camera work with the University of Guelph for Rogers as a camera operator, you're still painting a picture for the announcers as well. So one thing I love about this industry is doesn't matter what you are, the producer, the audio guy, the camera operator, the on-air talent, everybody has to work together to make a successful live stream or a broadcast on radio or TV. It's not just one person.
No, and I completely agree. And I went to the College of Sports Media for a couple of years before this, and I think that experience taught me is that I I had experience in every single different role: cameraman, producer, director, board op, on-air host, on-air reporter, doing both play-by-play and color commentary, being a sideline camera, being a main camera up top. And I think when you do that, it gives you an appreciation of those other roles. So it's like, if I'm gonna get into an on-air role later on in my career, I'm I'm going to appreciate what the rest of my team is doing for me, because I know what goes into that. I know how difficult it is to be a board operator sometimes. I know how difficult it is to be a sideline camera. Like, I know how difficult it is to have that weight on you for a
Yes.
whole entire
Oh,
game,
yes.
and your shoulder is hurting. You want to go sit down somewhere, but you have a story to tell. You have to give that to your on-air talent, and I think regardless of what position you're in, um, it takes a team. It takes a team at the end of the day. And I think when you have that appreciation for your team, when you have that appreciation for those different roles, it allows you to be better in whatever position you're in, because you do have that knowledge, you do have that appreciation.
Absolutely, and I can sort of relate with Rogers and Griffision here. One thing Jerry Howarth, who came on my show a couple years ago, told me, he goes, Chris, even in a radio broadcast or TV, obviously he did the Jays for 36 years. He goes, even if the game is a blowout and it's not a very competitive game, you can't let up. It doesn't matter if you're a camera operator or your audio guy. The broadcast, you cannot let up until the end of till there's no time left. The broadcast has to still go on.
Yeah, I agree. And, not only that, whether it's like a blowout or it's a quote unquote boring game, or maybe like you personally aren't feeling good going into it, you still have a job to do. You still have a story to tell. And it's like, last night, like there's certain nights where you go in and, you're not feeling great from a personal perspective or whatever's happening, work wise, personal life. Like I go in there knowing that there's probably a ton of people that have it much worse than I am, who are driving back from whatever job they're doing. Like you probably, like last night's game, we were still going at midnight, or we were going close to 1 o'clock last night. And like I'm thinking about, there's probably some guy who worked 12 hours, he's jumping in his car, and if I can give him an ounce of entertainment from that broadcast, or I have like a mom or a dad driving their kid back from school, or they're driving back from work, like whatever situation it is, like I'm in such a privileged and such a blessed position to do what I do. And if I can, like give an ounce of entertainment, or an ounce of happiness, or whatever it is, just keeping our listeners engaged, then that's something that I just have an obligation to do. And a lot of the time I feel blessed because it doesn't feel like work. And in radio you don't always necessarily get or directly hear that recognition, but I know that we have hundreds of thousands of people listening at some points, and it's up to me to provide them the best product as I can, and tell the best stories that I can, and wrap and package the game in the best way that I can.
The word I'm looking for to describe you is passion, and that's what I think I have for this industry. I don't look at it as work. Some nights I work to 2, 3 in the morning, working on my podcast show, doing all the digital writing I can and everything, interviews with the National Basketball League Canada, and I love it. To me, if you really have a passion for something, it's not really work.
No, and I completely agree. And like I used the word privilege before. It's like I feel privileged that I can pursue something that I'm genuinely interested in. Like I had the privilege to go to school to talk about sports in front of a camera, or film sports. Like it's really like, and I have, friends from other places, and they're not as fortunate as me, and they have to go to school for things that they don't like or they don't enjoy. And they have an obligation to make money and support their families. And in the sports media industry, you know, like n- not that really, really sort of powers it. And I feel grateful and privileged that I'm able to be in this position and do something that I enjoy from a day-to-day basis. And I love conquering those challenges, and every single day. And like when I walk away from a broadcast, I feel like I've contributed something. I've given something to given something of value to somebody else. And at the end of the day, like that's what kind of powers me to do what I do, oh, other than my just pure obsession for sports.
Same here. I'm just going to ask you some questions on this one. Can you just tell I'm out of Guelph, Ontario, which isn't far from Toronto, but can you tell my audience just a little bit about
Yep.
yourself? Where you went to school again, and when did you decide you wanted to pursue a career in the media industry?
Yeah. So, born and raised in Toronto, Ontario. I live in the East End. Went to high schools sort of across the city. So initially, when I graduated high school, I went to Carleton University for journalism. Really, really enjoyed my time in Ottawa. Great basketball culture at Carleton. Met some people there that still are with me in my life. And then once the pandemic hit, I really didn't want to continue. With sort of my learning style and the way that I pick up information, online school really wasn't an option for me. So I was looking at, and I wanted something a little bit more specific. Like I really enjoyed my journalism program at Carleton, but those journalism classes were only one or two out of the 4, 5, 6 classes that I'm taking, and I really wasn't feeling uh, fulfilled in what I was doing at that point. And I made the switch to the College of Sports Media, which is a sports media specific school in downtown Toronto. It's a 2-year college program, and they still had in-person classes available during COVID, and that just seemed like a new way for me to get where I wanted to go. And I wasn't, when I was at Carleton, I really wasn't set on doing sports media. Like I'm more than happy to be a regular news reporter or some sort of writer, and like sports were definitely a passion of mine, but it's something that I didn't necessarily need at that point in my work or school life. But when I went to CSM, everything changed, and I'll say this: it felt easier, but it wasn't necessarily actually. But it felt easier because I was doing something that I enjoyed. I wasn't really having the same roadblocks that I was having in high school or at Carleton, and I felt fulfilled in what I was doing. And like my whole life, I've had a sports obsession. I've kind of gone through phases of different sports. Like when I was like a toddler, really small, I liked NASCAR, and I went through a hockey phase, and I went through a baseball phase, and I went through a football phase, I went through a soccer phase, and I got through a basketball phase, obviously. And I felt like I want to do something that I enjoy for these next however many years of my life. And I think CSM was the best way for me to get there. And I had a lot of fun at CSM. My favorite part of it was just honestly the people that I met, and just the whole journey of it, the connections that I made. And as a whole, that's something that I've really, really learned to appreciate. And when I graduated from CSM, I got an internship at TSN 1050. Worked during the summer. I think it was like 4 or 5 days a week at most points. Granted during the summer, and then I got an offer. I got a contract in September, I believe it was. And the main part of that was that I was the producer for the Toronto Raptors games.
One thing I've also learned too on about this business is nothing that's handed to you. You have to go out and create and make your own opportunities, and you're gonna have to work really hard. Because Chuck Swirsky, I've had on the show, told me, Chris, hard work, preparation. I don't care how talented you are, you gotta make sure you always do your prep work and hard work, and you gotta create your own opportunities, and nothing's handed to you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in this industry, I've kind of, in the short time that I've been in it, there's sort of two, you can feel two different ways. You can feel that there's some moments where you feel like, and I imagine a lot of people are feeling like this as well, where, wow, there's really no opportunities for me. Like nobody's reaching out. Like, and a lot of people probably don't feel appreciated enough in this industry. But then when it's going well, you feel like the world is your oyster. You can do anything. Like you can create any sort of content you want, and you start to develop connections. And I think you just sort of have to, like you said, like get out there and really, really grab what you want, because other people are going to try to do the same thing. And there's a lot of talk about the journalism and media industry being really hard to get into, and to an extent stay in a little bit. But I feel like all of it really comes down to connections. And and that's why I really, really sort of appreciated the journey that I've been on. When you have, you can have goals in this industry, and it's definitely goals are a great thing to have in general. But I think you can be consumed by those goals a lot of the time. And if you're really, really set on it, then you can be really consumed. But I think if you appreciate the journey that you're on, the connections that you make, you'll find it to be a lot easier. Like all the people that I know that are successful in this industry all have a great rep, are great people, have great connections. I mean, I'm sure there's a few exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, it's just finding those connections. And when you feel like things necessarily aren't going well, you just kind of you you just have to kind of kick yourself in the butt a little bit, and do that work for yourself, and then create those opportunities, because those opportunities will come, but you just kind of have to create those for yourself. And it's kind of like an avalanche effect. Like once you start to get one, more come, and then more come, and then more come. So I mean, it'll definitely be a grind at the start for a lot of people, but just I can't stress the importance of connections enough, and being a genuine person in what you do, and being appreciative of other people. And I think that's the key for me.
Well said. And yes, I've had my fair share of rejections and days where I start doubting myself. But then about a week and a half ago, station manager from WQEE 99.1 FM in Atlanta, I guess he also has the Rod Peterson show on his station. I guess they've liked my work, and now I'm on 3-4 times a week during the weeknights at 8 o'clock. So sometimes you have to be patient in this industry, and you're right. Once you get one opportunity, then other opportunities come as well.
Yeah, and I mean, like, this industry is probably not one you'd call very secure, quote unquote. But like I said, like there's such a duality of it, and I would say, like, relish those moments when you have those opportunities, and take advantage of them, and be responsive, and be involved. And when those opportunities are coming, like, realize that if you do the work for yourself, and you know be genuine, and go out there and get those connections, then those times where those connections are falling on you, you'll be in a great spot.
Absolutely. And one thing I've learned about doing this podcast show, people think doing a podcast show, even at home, it's not easy. You have to book guests, you have to be flexible, you got to promote yourself. And I'm trying to learn everything I can. And sometimes my guests, they cancel out the last minute for whatever reason, and the show has to go on. So, and Eric Smith gave me some good advice too. When I first started this 3 years ago, I was doing everything scripted. And Eric said, Chris, just talk to me like we're at a donut shop or at a sporting event. And I've taken a little bit of advice and some stories from all my guests, and just try to apply it to myself and create my own style. Be yourself, even on radio or TV.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, like, people just want to be treated like people, whether it be on a podcast, whether it be in person. And like I said, like, the more genuine you can be, and the more yourself that you can be, the better off you'll be in the long run as well. And I mean, like, this industry just has an incredible amount to offer, and the more you go out there, and the more you take advantage of it, the more success you'll have.
Absolutely. I have to ask you this question as well, Owen. Did you have a mentor or mentors when you were in school and first starting out in the media industry?
Okay, wait. I just had another point I wanted to touch on for the previous
Okay.
question about
Okay.
being a radio producer, because I can appreciate that. I've been around more than a few radio producers at TSN 1050, for First Up, for Overdrive, and I have a massive appreciation, an understanding and appreciation of how tough it can be. I've probably done 3 or 4 radio shows for 1050, for the afternoon show, and man, it is a different type of stress. It's a different type of, like, you still have that similar pressure to live events where everything's live, and um certain amount of people are listening, but for those radio producers, like, you really don't have any time off. That's like the massive sort of appreciation about it. Like, you're constantly on a 24-hour clock. You constantly have guests to book. Um, And, like I can now have a massive appreciation of well-run radio shows. Like what Overdrive has is incredibly special, both from a personality and from a production perspective. And that's one of those programs that there's no real recipe to copy it or like try to remake it for something else. Like it's so incredibly genuine because the honor talent is genuine, because they have great production ideas. And I think that show is so incredibly successful because all those guys, whether it be Hayes, Noodles, O-Dog, are so true to themselves on TV. And I think there's a lot of other shows, both in Canadian and American media, where the hosts try to be something they're not, or analysts try to conform to some sort of style or narrative. And for me, from seeing really, really professional people work at their craft and do their craft really, you can kind of see the difference. And but yeah, as I totally understand the whole thing of guest canceling and just a lot of the production difficulties that come with being a producer, for sure.
There's something I was going to ask you, Owen.
Mentors, yeah.
Mentors. I was going to ask you, and also there's something else. I should have wrote it down. Sometimes I forget to write stuff down, but yeah, we'll go with mentors, and then hopefully I'll remember what else I wanted to ask you.
Yeah. Let me know if you do. In terms of mentors, like in sports media, I really didn't have a ton growing up, I'd say. Like, obviously, I watched Jay Onrait and Dan O'Toole in the morning when I was a kid. I would sit there, eat my cereal before school, and, just like watch sports highlights for like an hour or an hour and a half. I'd wake up really early. And, that was like back then where I really wasn't old enough to stay up for a lot of the West Coast games. And, I'd sit down there and like watch it like it was a real game. And that was definitely a part of it. I definitely, have an appreciation for a lot of the commentators in sports, like Peter Drury in soccer. I love to listen to Mike Breen in basketball. I love to listen to as well. But I didn't really have a specific sort of mentor in the industry specifically. I got to give a lot of credit to my grade 12 English teacher, Miss Burkett, who got me into writing. Like I wasn't the greatest student in high school, but she kind of allowed me to sort of fine tune my style and really just make me a better writer and sort of find my passion in that area. And once I sort of went through that, I was like, okay, I want to make some sort of content. And for me, writing is the absolute basis of any content that you're going to do. And I'm sure like, there's certain moments where, it is better to go off script and be yourself, but from production, on air, and even in just communication with other people, writing is so incredibly key. And I do have to give a lot of credit for Miss Burkett and some of my other English teachers throughout high school for helping me with that.
Since I have you on here, Owen, I now remember what I wanted to say to you. I've had Jamie McClellan on my show when I first started. I wasn't very good, and I'm hoping again to have him on again in the future. And Lindsay Hamilton came on when I first started as well. And I just was lucky to get them on, and I had to reach out to them, and I was lucky as well. There's something else I was going to ask you as well. This is one I was going to ask you as well. Tell us how important internships / volunteers are in terms of learning and gaining experience in this industry.
Yeah, they're really key. I think my internship at 1050 set me up for success, obviously, because you're kind of, I don't know. I kind of see it as training wheels a little bit. Like you're seeing other people on bikes, you're seeing how to do it, and you can sometimes. And I'll give TSN a lot of credit, 1050 a lot of credit. They gave me a lot of opportunities to jump on air and be on segments, and I kind of got those jitters out of my system through that. I mean, my strategy is just like I really don't think about viewers or listeners when I'm doing it right there and then. I kind of just treat it as a conversation or a debate. Like you said, like if you got a donut shop or you got a bar or you're at a cafe or you're at your buddy's place, just like talking and bantering about sports. So from that aspect, the internship prepared me really well from that perspective. And again, I had an opportunity to do some broadcast work for UFT, in some of their sports. I did a lot of commentary for their basketball and volleyball. I was involved in some of the soccer and hockey broadcasts as well. And being in different roles, like I was a sideline cameraman, I was a cameraman up top, I was play-by-play, I was color. I had some directing and graphics work as well. So those opportunities are really, really important when it comes to prepping you of getting into the industry. And if you look on a lot of the LinkedIn pages of really, really successful people in the industry, that's where it all starts, man. And it kind of just like nobody jumps in here for, I shouldn't say nobody, because I'm sure there are people that jumped in and were pros right away, but that's just it's just something that you have to do. And I've been really, really grateful because the people, my bosses and the directors and the producers leading me throughout my journey have been really, really receptive, really, really great people. And, just I've been able to build connections with those people, and, they deserve a lot of credit.
And one thing that comes to mind about you, Owen, is you're a jack of all trades, and that's what I'm trying to do as well. Is try to learn as much as I can. Doesn't mean I'm going to be great at everything, but at
Sure.
least try it and learn it, and just be willing to try new things. And I think in the last 3 years, I've taken more risks and doing more new things than I would have at my other profession for 24 years.
Yeah, it's really important. And I think not a lot of people realize that a lot of on-air talent right now started off as producers, and the vast majority of on-air talent has done other roles in their careers. And so like there's a misconception of on-air talent just popping up because they have a pretty face and they can speak well. It's like, yeah, sometimes that could be a part of it, but it really isn't. Like these are just, I would call them just broadcast professionals, broadcast pros, because they've done their work and they've done their, I don't know if you want to call it like dirty work, or they've been in the trenches already, directing and producing, and being a runner or being an assistant. Like you can provide value in so many different ways. It's like when that time finally comes for you to grab an on-air opportunity or grab a big producer role, or be a part of a broadcast that you've dreamed of, you're ready, you're prepped, and you're proven. And that's a massive part of it.
Well said. And I do realize too, sometimes I've made some mistakes as a camera operator, or doing some other stuff for Griff Vision at Rogers, or even this podcast show. And what I try to do is I try to learn from my mistakes, and just to try to keep improving. And I take every podcast show seriously. Anything I do in media work, especially, I take it serious and try to do the best job I can, and show people that I do have a passion for this industry, and willingness to work and learn.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody has their different approaches to things. For me, it's like I try to sort of have, I'm very serious in my preparation. I'm very serious in terms of my standards with a lot of things. Like I'm my biggest critic for sure. But I still do try to keep it. I wouldn't say like lighthearted, but I want the people that I work with to feel empowered to do their best. I don't want to. There's definitely like a fine balance there in terms of being a producer or being a director. Like when I'm working with my team, I want to empower everyone that I'm with. I want to encourage everyone that I'm with. Like I want everyone to be the best version of themselves. And obviously, criticism is going to come from any side. And one thing that I always keep in the back of my head, because I think I've done a lot of board opping for TSN 1050 as well. And I will self-admit I'm not the greatest board op in the world. I sometimes, I struggle. I don't have the quickest reflexes. But one thing that you kind of have to keep in mind is that like those mistakes don't last forever. And, once you jump on the board the next time or go on the mic the next time, you kind of just have to treat it as like completely new slate. And whatever you do, somebody has done worse than you. I can absolutely assure that whatever mistakes you make in the industry, whatever mistakes you make on a board or whatever you say, like somebody has done worse than you. And why I say that I don't always take myself too seriously is because, when you have those moments, you can kind of shrug it off a little bit easier when you might not take yourself as seriously, So, be serious, be professional in your preparation, the way that you operate about things. But, I find I have to sort of remove my ego a little bit. When I'm in those situations, and sometimes ego is very important in this industry, for a few reasons. But I think when you remove your ego and you sort of submit yourself to being part of a team, I think that's where your best work comes.
Well said, and that's what one of the tech guys for Rogers TV here in Guelph, Jeff Keddy, said to me when I did my first ever game as an audio board operator. He said said those exact same words, and I have to be honest. The first time I did audio, I was nervous as hell, and
Yeah.
it took me. But Jeff was there to guide me, and then after the first period, I started getting it, and it just takes a little time. It takes a little bit of time, and somebody to be patient with you, and I can't say enough about Jeff and what you just said here as well, Owen.
Yeah, nobody's perfect overnight. Everybody's in the exact same situation as you. Some people have, different journeys than others. Some people pick something up really quickly, but they might not be great at it. And some people in the industry are more of a slow burn, and then they ended up being great at their job, and they have a higher, quote unquote ceiling, if you want to call it. But everybody has their journey in the industry, and nobody's journeys are the same. So, yeah, you just sort of have to have an appreciation of the learning process and the connections you make along the way.
Okay. Are you okay for just a couple more questions, Owen?
Of course, man. Of course.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, because like I said, the show was originally called 30 Minutes Live with CDP, but I've been very lucky that a lot of my guests like to talk a bit longer. But I also work with them as well. And one word I wanted to use with you in this industry as well is you have to be flexible.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm more than happy to talk a little more.
Okay. For my audience here in Guelph, what is a daily day like for you as a producer for the Raptors games on TSN 1050? And just tell us a little bit about your freelance work you do as a producer and a technical producer.
Yeah, so for Raptors games, it kind of depends on what time the game is. I'm a pretty big night owl, if I'm honest with you. So if I have to get up by a certain time, I will. But most days, I do try to sleep in a little bit. Um, but because I do get most of my work done from like a content and writing perspective late at night, I find that's when I do my best work. So whether it be getting up from anywhere from 8 to 10 or 11, I'll kind of go through my emails. I'll take a scroll through Twitter. There's a few sort of articles I look at, sort of like a little morning coffee run throughout all the storylines. I'll go through Reddit. I'll go through Twitter. Go through, like I said, a few different places where I get articles from, and kind of try to figure out which storylines are the most important for tonight. Kind of building a lineup of most importance to, I guess, least importance. So I'll do that, create the storylines that I wanted that I want to tell that night, or that'll get Jonesy and Javon to tell as well. And I do have sort of the lineup that's been built for me from previous producers there. I think it was Nick McVicker who made it. I have to give a lot of credit to. And based on when the game is starting, I'll sort of develop the schedule. So when our breaks need to be, when we're coming back from them, ad reads that I have to put in there. It's just a whole bunch of information that I'm putting in this document, really, like ad reads, injuries, storylines, player stats, just as much as I can get. And I am someone that has ADHD, which is a blessing and a curse. Blessing in the fact that it allows me to kind of be really obsessive about things and really, really focused on like a certain individual task. It's not great for multitasking at times, but I kind of try to override that with the detail in my prep. So like when the time comes to the game, my brain isn't in a ton of different places. And sometimes we have situations where I can't help that, but I try to circumvent that with the detail of prep that I do. And I think I really don't feel comfortable going into a lot of broadcasts when I don't have the amount of prep that I want to, or I'm not prepped correctly. And I learned that very, very quickly. And so, just doing as much prep as I can do, building my lineup, being in conversation with my pre-halftime and post-game team, which is Jim Taddy, Warren Ward, and Josh Lewinberg, and sort of communicating with them, seeing Josh's availability because he's a TV reporter as well. Sometimes he'll have a pregame hit to do. So communicating with them and just being in communication with my team, building my lineup, grabbing a bite to eat, taking the subway over, and settling in. I'll do an audio check at the arena if we have a home game, and I'll try to get our IS feed as early as I can if we have an away game. And honestly, once the game starts, I'm still cutting clips from the game. I'm still in communication. But for me, that's the part that I enjoy. That's where I feel like my work can kind of show. The work that I've done all day or from a night before, that's where I feel like I can. Those are I guess you'd call it like the fruits of my labor from the prep that I do, and I really, really enjoy it. And I can't. And I was talking about this with my board up Luca yesterday, and like I'm just so incredibly grateful for the team that we have, because the relationship that we have, and like I said, like Jonesy recognizes that, and I think he calls it like a cast of thousands to get us on there, and he's completely correct about that. So just being in communication, building a lineup, finding storylines, and sort of letting it flow once the game starts.
And you guys might not be on the court like the players, but you are a part of the game, and you guys are just like the players. You can't take one play off.
Yeah, that's completely true. And we have to rely on the support of our cast, and everybody's locked in for the most part, man. Like, there are sort of ebbs and flows of the night where you need to be more focused than others, obviously, but I'm someone who really, really likes to just watch basketball in general. And so I'm locked in on that and seeing if I can pick up little things within a game, like what plays are they running? What is this guy doing? Like, how can we attack? How are the Raptors attacking certain defenders individually? Who's making an impact off the bench, just like little things like that you can see and find. Or if I see, Jonesy and Javon talking about something, I'll do my best to try to supplement them with any information or any other facts that I can, like any good producer should do. So from that aspect, I think that's what separates a lot of the good producers from the great from the good. Just being locked in and, within those moments within a game, making them better and supplementing them, and giving my honor talent, the facts and the information to make them look good and to help them succeed on the night.
Okay. This next question, you've already answered the first part of it. What I wanted to ask you, Owen, is what are some of the hardest aspects of the industry, especially for someone that is trying to break into the industry?
Yeah, like the one that I touched on before is just kind of feeling like there's not a lot ahead of you at times because, it's not a secure industry. I'm sure a lot of people can kind of attest to that. It's like, I wouldn't call it not as secure, but it's not as secure as having your typical, 9 to 5, right? And I think it's just sort of staying composed and having that motivation to continue to further yourself, because there are opportunities out there, but a lot of the times you really can't see them. And I think staying motivated and having that belief in yourself, regardless of what's happening around you, is really important. Another one of the challenges is that it's kind of a 24/7 job to a certain extent. I mean, people do take time off and you have that, but when you're a producer, and especially this is why I appreciate the radio show producers, is that like you're never turned off. Like you are always sort of scrolling and getting in communication with people and just finding whatever information that you can at any given moment. Like there's times I'll be watching game at a friend's house and I'll hear something and I'll go to my notes app on my phone and write it. It's like you can never really turn it off, and it's a blessing and a curse, because I really really love sports. I really really enjoy sports, but I do consider myself a multi-dimensional person, and I enjoy other things in my life, and I love having other non-sports related experiences. And so it's just finding that balance is really really tough, because I think in order to do this, it has to be an obsession. Nobody is in here to, nobody's being forced to go into this job. I'm sure there are a lot of students that, are forced to be lawyers, or forced to be whatever other job you want to think of. But everyone's in this industry because they love it, because they're obsessed with it. And I think it's just finding that balance outside. And I think when you're early on in this industry, I don't think you can really afford to have that balance at times, because you constantly have something to prove. And these are kind of the years where you do have to go and do that dirty work and stay not really locked in, but sort of stay tuned in to what's going on. Like there's a lot of days where I want to shut off my phone and not paying attention to anything, but it's like I kind of have a duty to myself and duty to my job, where it's like I have to be locked in on what's happening in the industry. I have to be locked in on certain trends, because if I'm not, then ultimately the product suffers. And some of the best stuff that I've come up with has come from a random night, me watching basketball at home, or a random night of me watching UFC with my friends, or whatever you want, a random night watching hockey at a bar. It's like I'll get ideas in those spots, and I'm like, wow, like I really can't turn this off right now. And it's like finding that balance is really really tough, because your mental health matters as well. Your mental health is massive, and I think keeping that is really really important in this industry as well, because burnout is definitely a thing, and finding that balance is key. And it's definitely been one of the hardest parts, just sort of turning it on and off when you need to.
Well said. And one thing too is, anytime you start a new career, especially my story is a little different from everyone else's. You have to sacrifice a few things, and to be honest, I have sacrificed a little bit of money. And to be honest, I'm actually happier. And this is something I feel like this is something I really enjoy doing, and the people skills too, and building rapport with coaches and players, and working with Griff Vision and Rogers TV and stuff like that. And I'm willing to make the sacrifices to hopefully be in this industry long term.
Yeah, you really couldn't have said it better. And I had John Shannon as a teacher at CSM, and he talked about sacrifice really, really often, actually. And, you're going to have to sacrifice birthdays. You're going to have to sacrifice, nights out with your boys. You're going to have to sacrifice certain family events. You're going to have to, like, last year I worked Christmas night, and I worked on the night of my birthday. And, it's just something that you're going to have to, do in order to have those opportunities later on in your career, in order to have those connections later on in your career. And I think if you do that, it kind of, it really, really helps you both internally and externally, because you're continuing to prove yourself right internally, that you know what you want to do, you're going to have to follow through with it. And then hopefully other people will recognize what you're doing as well. And sacrifice is definitely something that I've had to do. Like I haven't really gone out of the city since I've started my job in September. I haven't really gone out of the GTA area at all. Like, um, that's another thing. Like, I'd love to go on weekend trips or go away or do all these things, but it's like I have to build a routine for myself. I have to build consistency for myself. And I think in this industry and in sports as well, they say like availability is the best ability, and that's incredibly important in sports media.
100%. And maybe one day you'll even write your own book about your story, because I think you got a lot of great stories, even right now, to share with everybody.
Yeah, hopefully I can get a few more the next decade or so, and yeah, who knows?
And never say no to opportunities. Like I said, I've had opportunities with the Toronto Argonauts, the Buffalo Bisons, the National Lacrosse League, and the National Basketball League of Canada. I know some people are like, "Hey, you're not getting any money for these jobs you're doing," but I am gaining experience, and experience and learning is just as important as the money aspect of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's probably more important. I mean, obviously everybody needs a roof over their head and everybody needs to
Yes.
provide for themselves, but I was in the exact same situation with UFT, and I don't think I would be where I am today without those opportunities. And yeah, like financially, a lot of people in this industry are in a tough position, but that just comes with one of the other sacrifices. But to me, it doesn't really even matter because I have that support system around me. I have people that believe in me. I have people that support me. And at the end of the day, it's making me happier. Like you said, like you made a financial sacrifice, but at the end of the day, um, you're living a life that makes you happier. You're in an industry
Yeah.
that makes you happier. And,
Yeah.
for a lot of people, for some people it might pay off and for some people might others from a financial perspective. But I think at the end of the day, like this is a passion for the vast majority of people in the industry, and they're happy regardless of the financial position that they're in. And I feel the exact same way.
And one thing also, Owen, is even though I'm 50 years old, everybody in this media, the majority of the people have been really supportive of my work. And it just makes me want to even do a better job when people are very supportive and they're not looking at my age as a liability, but just my life experience and my life skills I'm trying to apply to my media work as well.
Yeah, and like even when I was at CSM, there's people from all age groups there, and I think when you have a passion and a similar interest, it really really brings people together, and that's why I like sports in the first place
Yes.
because it brings people together, and I love it in conversations with people where you first meet someone and then like you bring up a topic like sports and you see someone's eyes light up, or you finally kind of see them get out of their shell and talk about something that they enjoy. And like sports has a really, really unique place in society where it does do that. And there's a lot to be said about rivalries and, I'm sure there's negative effects that come from that. But for the most part, sports does an amazing job of bringing people together. And that's what I really, really like about that. And it's something that's really, really, unique about sports. And yeah, I can't even say more about that.
And also, as for a podcast is only as good as its guests. I'm just the host, and I've been very fortunate and very appreciative to have guests like yourself, Rod Black, Chuck Swirsky, Eric Smith, and people I never thought would ever come on my show, giving me an opportunity to speak with them and to hear their stories and how they started up. And this is what I love about doing media work, is the storytelling aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, like, you also have to give yourself some credit, man. Like you're building something for yourself here, and there's a lot. I've seen a lot of shows with really, really great guests, but a poor host that's not asking the right questions, and I guess you are correct, but you got to give yourself some credit, man.
All right. Well, I'm kind of like you said, I'm my harshest critic, and I'm always trying to learn and keep improving every time I do one of these shows.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Definitely. Final question for you, Owen. any advice for those that are watching or later listening on my audio platforms, looking to pursue a career in the media industry as a producer, on air talent? And where again can my audience find you on social media? And the next Raptors game is tomorrow night on TSN 1050 against the Lakers, I believe. And I think I'll let you talk there.
Yeah. So in terms of advice, I'm trying not to say anything really, really cheesy here. I would just say, like, I hate saying this, but just like be yourself and be true to yourself in everything that you do. There's no, and like I kind of have this opinion for every single thing that you do in life. Like, value yourself, understand what you do well, understand what you bring to the table, but also be willing to be a sponge and learn from others and admit to your mistakes, and just be personable, bring something unique, and everybody has something unique, man. Like, regardless of how you are on air or your camera work or your production style, whatever it is, like, every single person in this industry has something unique they can bring, and recognize that, understand that you have value. I think that's something that I like to talk about as well. Like, understanding your value in the industry, understanding the value that you bring, and just being true to yourself and being personable and be willing to learn. Those are the biggest things. In terms of social media, you don't have to follow me. Just kind of, if you like me, you like me. If you don't feel like you have to. Owen Halsey on Twitter. And if you're in the industry, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. And I think for TSN 1050 we don't have the Lakers game, but I think we have one next week.
There's 3 home games next week. 3 home games: Denver on the 14th, Oklahoma City on the 16th, and Minnesota on the 18th.
Yeah, don't quote me, but I believe we have the Denver game. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we do have that Denver game. Either way, if there's a Raptors game on and you're in a car or you're chilling somewhere, tune in to TSN 1050, man. I appreciate it.
Okay. And you're gonna laugh when I tell you this. I haven't been to a Maple Leafs game in Toronto since 1981 at the old Maple Leaf Gardens, and the last Raptors game I went to was 2002 at the then Air Canada Center with Vince Carter and the Raptors and the Bucks. So I need to come down to a Leafs home game and to a Raptors game in Toronto. It's been going on 21 years since I've been to a Raptors home game.
Wow, man! Like, the fact the last Leafs game you went to was at what you said it was at the Old Garden.
Yeah, 1981.
Oh my gosh.
1981.
What was your I don't want to spend too much time here, but like, what was your experience like seeing games at the Garden? Because that's a place I love to see. I love to go there for Ryerson games. I'll go and do some shopping in the Loblaws there, but I always sort of wonder and try to picture in my head like what it would be like.
I was born in 72, so I'm 50, but my late father took me to a couple games there, 1978 against Hartford and 1980 against the Islanders. And as a 6 to 8 year old kid, it was like I was in awe of being at Maple Leaf Gardens. I went there for a circus there as well when I was living in Oakville, but I was very fortunate to go there. And I've heard what they've done with the building, and they've done they've done a wonderful job restoring that building for the TMU. It used to be Ryerson. Now I think.
Yeah, sorry, TMU. That's important. But
yes,
it's weird. There's this sort of sensation that I get, and when I talk about people that have gone to sports games, they kind of feel the same thing. Every single time I step into some sort of venue, whether it be Rogers Center for Blue Jays or going to a Raptors game or we're going to a university basketball game or whatever you want to think of, every single time I step into a venue and I get my first look of the field or the diamond or the rink, I get like a little special like feeling. Like I get chills like every single time. And this is why I love live events, and I want to do live events so I can be in those environments. Every single time that I walk into an arena, I still get that like exact same feeling that I do when I was a kid. And I pray that feeling doesn't go away. I don't think it will, but every single time I step into any sort of sports venue, there's just something special about it. And, like my inner kid, my inner child kind of like comes out, and I feel that excitement. And, that's why I will never turn down a ticket to a live sporting event, regardless of what it is. It can be Marlies, it can be Toronto Rock, it can be Argos, whatever it is. I will never turn down a ticket to a live sports event, because there's still something special about it. There's still something magical about it. And, that's what I love about sports and what I love about live events.
And well said. And some people like going on vacations to islands and stuff like that. For me, my form of vacation is being at a stadium or a rink at a sporting event. That's my type of
I
vacation.
agree. Every single time we go away as a family, with my family, I say, like, you know what? I got to go to one sporting event while I'm there. And so, we went to Orlando as a family. We went to go see Orlando Magic game. I went to Barcelona with my family, went to a FC Barcelona game. It's like, that's like something that if I'm going to go somewhere else, I got to take advantage of it. And, even when I'm in, like you said, when I'm in Toronto too, like it does have that feel of, being on a vacation, letting all your worries go away and just being immersed in the atmosphere of the sporting event and everything that's going along during those 2 or 3, whatever, how many hours you're there.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I can get myself down to the Scotiabank Arena for a Raptors game, I will let you know, and maybe I'll be able to pop in and say hi to you before your broadcast.
You know what? Right now, I'm producing games from back to the TSN studio, but I'm sure Jonesy, if you came down, I'm sure Jonesy would love to, stay in chat. He's like, he's amazing when it comes to that kind of stuff. That's another thing that I give him credit for. We'll talk to anyone who comes up to him, loves talking basketball, loves talking about sports media. And, he's one of those guys that just, loves talking to fans and other people in the industry for sure.
And that's what I love about this industry too. And just been able to meet a lot of new connections and new friendships on here. And again, Owen, thank you for giving me more than 45 minutes of your time today. I really enjoyed hearing your stories and how you got into the industry and behind the scenes of a Raptors broadcast. And I'd love to have you back on it again as a guest again in the future.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you having me on. I hope I sounded eloquent enough, but yeah, man, I really appreciate it, and I'd love to jump back sometime in the future.
Definitely. And if you can give me about 20 minutes, I'll have this episode downloaded to my audio platforms, and I will send you a link on LinkedIn and on Twitter as well.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Owen, and have a great day and continued success.
You as well, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed season 5, episode 31 today with Owen Hall. He is the producer for the Toronto Raptors radio broadcast on TSN 1050 in Toronto. And the Raptors' next game is Friday night at 10:30 against the Los Angeles Lakers. But again, I want to say thank you to my guest, Owen Hall, for popping by here. You guys can follow him on Twitter at Owen Halsey. Owen Hall, with a SY, and you guys can also follow him on LinkedIn, Owen Hall, as well. Guys, you can also check out the website, iHeartRadio.ca/TSN Toronto. So if you want to listen to TSN 1050 in Toronto, it's on 1050 AM on the radio dial, or you guys can check it out on iHeartRadio as well. Before we wrap this up, guys, I did an interview last night with David Schooley. He's the new co-owner of the Kitchener-Waterloo Titans of the National Basketball League of Canada. I'm just going to put this on here courtesy of CDP's YouTube channel. Kitchener-Waterloo, from the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium after the Windsor Express defeated the Titans 125-104 tonight here in Kitchener. My guest right now is David Schooley, along with his wife Kate. They are now the new co-owners of the Kitchener-Waterloo Titans of the National Basketball League Association. David, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your wife Kate and how you became involved with the National Basketball League of Canada?
So we've been a sponsor with the KW Titans from season 1 in 2016. We're now in season 6. The score tonight was actually 125-101. We don't want to exaggerate anything. It's been a great experience all the way along. Tonight was a little bit of a tough loss, but we've got a lot of games yet to play.
Definitely. I was going to say, how did you guys actually get involved with Audley? How's it been with the commissioner Audley Stevenson in becoming co-owners of this team?
Oh, we love Audley. Right, Audley is always. I'm a little surprised that he's not here tonight because he makes it out to almost every game, and I don't know how he does that. You know what? He's a great commissioner. We're always happy to work with him. He had a tough job this year because we needed a late start in the league, and just trying to figure out the scheduling was 2 jobs in itself.
What are going to be the main nights for the Titans home games here at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium?
So the challenge with playing a 3-month season in 2 months, we ended up with a lot of Wednesday nights, which is a bit challenging for. So half our home games are Wednesday nights. We're playing here on Sunday, London on Sunday. So last Saturday our attendance was pretty good. We're hoping this Sunday we'll have the same. But next season we'll be playing a regular start beginning of January, and we'll play our 3-month season and hopefully some more home games next year.
Okay, I'm based out of Guelph. For fans that have never been to a Titans game or an NBL game, what would you tell them why they should come down to a game live here at the Aud?
If you enjoyed basketball in Guelph, you will enjoy it as much or more in Kitchener. It might be a little bit of a drive, but the caliber of basketball is equal, if not maybe a tiny bit higher level basketball in our league. The CDPL is doing a great job, but you know what? Come down and give us a try. It's 25 minutes down the road for you.
And how can they get tickets?
kwtitans.com. Right now, there's a discount code Ask David. That's my mantra. Ask David. I write an advice column for Metroland every week. Guess what? Called Ask David. And if you enter that discount code into the KW Titans website, you can get tickets. That'll get you $5 off of a bowl seat, $10 off a baseline cruiser, and $15 off a courtside.
And when is your next home game?
Our next home game is Sunday. So we're heading to Windsor on Friday. We'll play Windsor Friday night. We'll be back here. We'll be off Saturday, and we'll be playing London on Sunday at 2 o'clock.
Okay, and just to wrap this up, can you just talk about Can you just talk about you and your wife, Kate's, being in real estate quickly?
Oh, so you know what? I've been in real estate for a couple of years or a couple of decades now. You know what? That's how we make our living, and you know that certainly helps support our latest endeavor, owning the KW Titans. Our goal is to take the team to 100% community ownership in 10 years. So you know, it's a lofty goal. We need some help with some attendance. So if you haven't been to a game before, come on out.
Okay.
You'll be a fan.
Definitely, and I am as well. But hey, David, I want to say thank you for giving me live with CDP, Chris Palme, some time tonight, and really appreciate it. And good luck to you and Kate and the Titans the rest of the season. Thank you so much for doing
Excellent.
this.
Go Titans.
All right, guys, that clip was courtesy of my YouTube channel, and thank you to David Schooley again for coming on last night. Unfortunately, last night Windsor defeated the Titans 125-101 at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium, but you can check out their website kwtitans.ca for tickets and stuff like that. Great product as well. Before we wrap up this podcast show, guys, the next live with CDP Sports Talk will be this Monday, I believe, Monday, March 13th at 6:30 p.m. Season 5, episode 32 with Morgan Parrish. She's an anchor reporter with Fox 19 News in Cincinnati, Ohio. So Monday, March 13th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, Morgan Parrish, an anchor reporter from Fox 19 News in Cincinnati, will be on, and it will also be on WQEE 99.1 FM, the Key in Atlanta, Georgia, as well. So I'm looking forward to speaking to Morgan again for the third time as well, guys. And also, guys, Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment talk show, is hosted by yours truly, Chris Pame, is now available on weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern on WQEE 99.1 FM, the Key, the home of Southern sports talk and the heartbeat of Atlanta as well. And finally, guys, before we wrap this up, let's see. Live with CDP Sports Talk is also live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Thank you so much for everybody for watching on these live streams today. And also, guys, my website is beacons.ai/Chris D. Pame. All my previous podcast shows, all my digital content work is on this website as well. And also, guys, Live with CDP Sports Talk, again, is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles as well. You guys can also follow me at TikTok at Live with CDP. And also, guys, StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports Talk. If you're into webinars or podcasting, I would highly recommend StreamYard as well, guys. And finally, Live with CDP Sports Podcast is available on audio platforms such as iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Stitchered, and Tuned In. And finally, before we wrap up this show, guys, last week I had a little minor fender bender with my 2023 Chevy Trailblazer. Wasn't hurt, not a lot of damage, but I want to shout out to Fix Auto Collision at 905 Woodlawn Road West in Guelph in the Auto Mall. And you can talk with their manager, Kevin Knight. He's the body shop manager there. Or email him at guelph@fixauto.com or give them a call at 519-836 0600. And again, thank you to Fix Auto Collision, 905 Woodlawn Road West in Guelph, for getting my car into the shop today and fixing a little bit of minor damage from last week. But again, check out Fix Auto Guelph, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall if you ever happen to need their service there as well. And again, finally, thank you to Owen Hall for coming on. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Owen Halls SY, and also check out TSN 1050 AM on iHeartRadio /TSN/Toronto. Again, thank you to Owen Hall for coming on. He is a producer for the Toronto Raptors radio broadcast on TSN 1050. And again, thank you to everybody for watching this live stream and on my audio platforms, and to my listeners on WQEE 99.1 FM, the Key in Atlanta, Georgia, for listening to this episode this evening as well. I hope everybody has a great rest of the afternoon, great evening, and we'll see you guys this Monday at 6:30 for another edition of Live with CDP Sports Talk with Morgan Parrish from Fox 19 News in Cincinnati, Ohio. Have a great afternoon, great weekend, everybody. And again, thank you to Owen Hall for coming on Live with CDP Sports Talk, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Good night, everybody.